Good morning, everybody. It's that time of week where you grab a coffee and you hang out with Kevin, Chris, and Jeff. We are excited to be with you this morning. On Sunday, we talked about compassion, and we started with a quote that I quoted actually a couple times in a couple different services. But I'm so enthralled by this quote, so I wanted to raise it with you guys and say, hey, what do you think about it? A.W. Tozer wrote, "What you think about God is the most important thing about you." What do you guys think about that?
Yes. Next question.
Typical truth now, hey? It's just that. Yeah.
I think what he's also trying to say is like, it reveals a lot about you. Like it's a very revealing statement because you talked about the fact that it even how you live your life is very much reflected in that question. Because if you see God as this, it actually has a tendency not just to like, I'm just going to think about God and in this way, but actually, if I think about God this way, it actually causes me to do this action. So if I think about God as a big judge in the sky with a stick, then my life is only going to be based on rules and following, and But if God is a God of relationship who longs for a deeper connection with me, then and calls me to live a certain way and treat others a certain way, then my actions will reflect that, right? And I think it's this amazing trickle down, but in some ways it can stay very academic as well too, of like, well, I'm just going to think about God, and then if he has no importance or connection, then when I step away and stop thinking about him, then it has no impact on my life, right?
Yeah.
Well, even that's, God is just a part of my life, right?
Yeah.
Like, when you think about God,
Put God in a box.
Yeah, so like he's just, I think about it once in a while, right? He's even telling, in the vein of all you're talking about. Yeah. Yeah, anything to add there, Chris? Or
No,
thoughts?
I think what happens is when we live in either extreme, because there's the extreme view of, okay, you started to touch on a couple things, right? Sometimes people will say God is love, but every time they talk about him, God is harsh, God is, and that whole angry God image. But and you're like, what you say doesn't match up with what you actually think or live or believe or how you act. On the other end of things, though, sometimes people talk about God entirely loving, but or conceive of him in such a way without any sense of his holiness, and you're like, so it can. The inconsistencies that we hold about God tend to leak, and I think that's what really you are touching on, right?
Yeah.
Is God entirely abstract, or is he present relational?
Right.
Is he entirely unloving, kind, judgmental, or is he entirely loving? And it's like, well, it's all of the above.
Yeah.
And how do we actually lean into that, which we're as humans not great at, that gray soupiness, that God is entirely other, but also very much here. And that's, as we celebrate, I think that's why Christmas is so important, that God, who was entirely other, said, actually, I'm gonna come as that. And that's why then Jesus was able to say, if you know me, you know the Father, right? I've come to reveal the Father, right? And it's like, when we look at you, we're like, okay, now we've seen God? Like, that's literally what Jesus said to us, you've seen me, you've seen the Father. It's like, well, how? Because God is more than that, but also that. And it does hurt the head.
Yeah. So maybe that's what I'm wondering is like, is your question, what do we think about that phrase?
Yeah.
Or are you asking like, what do I think about when I think about God? Is that what you're asking or no?
In the vein of Chris's soupiness, yes.
We're not talking about that till the 24th, though.
I find, we're moving ahead of us. I find it just a fascinating phrase that includes all, like, not to be like, oh, what I think about God is really important, so I got to think of the right thing. as much as, oh, what I think about God
But
is important.
Don't jump over that, because a lot of
Sorry,
people get
sorry.
trapped on that, and that's
Yeah.
where they trip. They're like,
Yeah.
I have to have the right thought, or it's like, well,
So that's
it's a process, I think.
Exactly. That's where I was
Yeah.
going. Like yes, we do want to think the right things, but the right things are so much bigger than us
Mhm.
and not easily confined. So I think I guess what I'm kind of learning about this idea or thinking when I think about it is, I want to study God more. I want to get to know Him more. I want to know about Him and know Him, and I want to invite more people into that process together, because it's so easy to say, I got God figured out. He's
Mhm.
transcendent, He's
Yeah.
immanent, and these are big words for He's out
No,
there.
those are
you know.
extremely important words. I love those
Yeah,
words.
Yeah, and he's infinite, and yet He's entered history, or He's beyond time, and He's entered it. And all these things, how do we, like you said, love, yes, we have so much to learn about Him as love. However, He's also holy. And there's a flip side to love. If you love someone, you're going to hate anything that hurts them, right? And so He actually is a wrathful God. But we tend to think of His wrath against us, and it's against the sinfulness that we are so enmeshed in. So, yes.
Yeah.
Sorry. Now that you've
absolutely.
separated
And yet-
those two things, do you want to answer one of those? Or? Okay.
Well, no, and to complicate it even more, Jesus removes us from that, right? Like we have the
Yes.
opportunity to be removed from.
Yes.
So no, like yes, God has a problem with sin, but it's
Mhm.
not that He hates people; it's that
Mhm.
He hates that we go back to the
Yes.
sin.
Yes.
That we as the proverb, right? As a dog returns to its vomit.
Yeah.
There it is.
Yeah.
That we kind of go, maybe that didn't smell so bad, and we circle back, and it's like,
Yeah.
here.
Why didn't I like that the first time?
Right. So I guess it's important that we grow in our thoughts about God,
Yes.
but yet also understand that that will always be limited. And I think that's what you were trying to say
Mhm.
too. That
Mhm.
if we go like, I got God figured out,
Yeah.
because we see in Scripture people did that. They're like, we know God, and then He goes, I'm going to show you something new,
Mm-hmm.
and He shows up in a new way.
Mhm.
And can we, or do we have space in our understanding of God
Yeah.
for Him to continue to be God
Mm-hmm.
and do something new? And that's, I think, an important part when we think
Yeah.
about that question, is not that we make, because the point isn't just to make sure that I have 100% correct thoughts about God. Because sometimes people have done that and actually have missed the
Mhm.
real pursuit, which is just knowing God.
Yes. Yeah. We need to know about Him, but in order to know Him, right?
Mhm.
And that is really actually the most important. But then as we're knowing Him, it's kind of like I get to know my wife by getting to know about her, by getting to know her, it's like a.
Yeah.
But what you were talking about, how having got it all figured out. I think that's one of the things about Job. The book of Job does is it takes the three friends who think they have God all figured out.
Yeah.
They're like, Job, this is how it is, and Job's like, my experience tells me different.
Yeah.
And then they're like, but you're neglecting this, and then God comes down. What does He say? Like Job has it right. Like I'm not confined to a box, like you said.
And like you said, I think it's very much, you can paint a picture and say this is kind of how I've seen God through some of my experiences, and yet that same picture could look totally different to somebody else, right? So like you say, if you were to say, okay, what do I think about when I think about God? Like unbelievably complicated in so many different ways, and yet I have these little pictures and these little moments, like learning and understanding in Bible school and in worship the difference between transcendence and immanence,
Mhm.
that God is like outside of my understanding and reality and huge and amazing, and He holds the universe in His hands, and all these amazing, wonderful things. He's holy and He's just, and He created concepts that we just begin to understand, and yet there's these other flip sides where God met me beside a bed when I was 4 years old.
Mhm.
God touched me when I was 16 and called me into music ministry. God met me on the side of the mountain as another cyclist beside me almost. And like to experience those kinds of like deep connection points, and even, you know, in my relationship with my wife and my family, like he's so many of these other things, and it's like, okay, maybe God is like water, where like God can be ice and steam and vapor, and you know, I find him here and I find him in the ocean, and he's, you know, there's water in the cloud, and hey, look, there's now maybe water on Mars or something like that, right? Like there's so many different ways that we don't even begin to understand God, and yet he is meeting us in so many different ways that it kind of just is mind-boggling. And yet, like Job, okay, these are my experiences, this is kind of what I'm seeing, and I'm hearing all these other things from you, but I also see God as like just with me and present, and yes, hard to understand through difficult circumstances, but still good.
Yeah. Couple things prompted in that. One, in all your different modes of God, as long as we're not using that to explain the Trinity, I think we're okay. But more than that, which actually kind of sort of prompts me to think of like the fish in a water kind of thing, right? Fish doesn't know it's in water. We don't know, I think, really understand that God is fully like present with us in this space, except he is. We know it conceptually, but like we don't really know it. And just to complicate the whole thing more, I mean, we can talk around and around about how complex God is, and yet Jesus comes along and says, children get it better than you.
Yeah.
And it's like, like, how does this 4-year-old understand something about God I don't?
Yeah.
And it's like, and just, they get it. They understand it. They're closer to the kingdom. And it's like, oh, okay. So it's easy enough that a kid can get it, but it's so complex that we spend our life trying to understand it better.
That's so good, Chris. And I think of that. Why does a kid get it? Because they know they don't. They just trust, right? Like, I see this person that cares about me. I'm going to trust them, you know. And I think that there might be more to it, but I think that's partly what it is. And man, if we could just be like that, you know, we're not. Well, you might be, but I'm not. I struggle to be. So yeah. Well, lots to break a brain with. Like I said on Sunday, it's a brain breaker. This whole thinking about God, which, wow, what an amazing, you know, that just adds to the amazingness of God. If we could understand him, how amazing would diminish his amazingness, but we can't, and so therefore. Sorry, I'm going off.
No. I think you're right. But like, I think the thing to come back to is the phrase that you started with. God describes himself, and the first thing he says is, "I'm compassionate and gracious, and slow to anger and abounding in love." Right? Like, that's a good like sum it all up, tie it all together. Yeah.
We spent so much time thinking, "What's God like?" And he goes, "As well, just listen to me."
Like, yeah.
I told you.
I know. And obviously that's not all that God is, because the Bible reveals much more about him. But when he talks about his character, that's what he says. That's huge. And that's actually the most quoted verse in the Bible, by the Bible. So, moving forward.
Which we've danced around many times.
We've
talked about God in a box. We've talked about soupiness. We've talked about...
That's right.
Okay,
well, we'll unwrap some of those things now. Hey, unwrap.
It's Christmas.
So our coffee talk comes out on Thursdays, but Friday, tomorrow night, from when this comes out, Friday night there is a ladies' gathering here at the church for Anna, one of the young moms in our church and in our gathering, and so we want to support her and encourage her and meet her new baby Dominic, and so ladies, you can gather together here Friday night.
Very good.
You're going to tell us about something else too.
Yeah, but it's after.
Oh, okay.
Right, because on Sunday
We
morning...
have to go to timeline.
That's right.
On Sunday morning, many of you brought in shoe boxes already, which is awesome. If you still have some to bring them Sunday. We are going to have... we're going to have people, little elves, if you will, receiving them in the foyer. And so if you're a kid and coming on Sunday, come early, like 9:30 would be awesome. Wear something Christmassy, like a nice Christmas sweater, or if you're more inclined to wear a Christmas dress, whatever, but just dress festive. And help us receive the shoe boxes, and we're gonna make piles of boxes around the place, and then just say thanks to God for what He's going to do through them, and thank all of you who have been interested in supporting this ministry, and we're going to send them off, and so that's Sunday morning this week.
Excited about that.
And then Sunday following, the 24th, following the service, we love to kind of just get people together and kind of take a step aside from our gathering here on this Sunday morning to, worship and pray and listen to the Word, to just be together. And so on the 24th, we're calling everybody to just hang out and come enjoy some soup after the service. That's on the 24th. You can just show up, but there's a few people that it would be helpful to have a few people make soup, and I have a couple volunteers already. If you have the opportunity or the drive to make a big pot of soup, can you talk to me, email me, or call me here at the church? That would be great.
And that will all be wrapped up before the Jonas Brothers concert later in the afternoon, right?
It should be, yeah.
I don't know anything about that.
There's like 2 people who will, that's all right.
Okay.
Super niche.
And then there was one more thing you were going to tell us about.
Yes, well,
Oh, yeah.
also on Sunday, tickets are still available for the ladies' Christmas banquet, which is coming up the end of November, which 2 weeks away. It's coming real quick, so there's only like 10 days left to get tickets, so make sure you're on that. I say 10 days, but really if they sell out early, which is a very big possibility, so just be aware of that, and would love to have you available to join in on that Friday night event in just a couple weeks from now. So
It's always great. I mean, they do a lot, decorate well, good food.
I hear mostly about like the people who are there and the conversations.
Yeah.
Like it's a lot that goes into it,
Yeah,
and
yeah.
yet it's also like a great time around a table with some friends you bring and some people you know are getting to know better, celebrating and sharing a good meal and all of that. So
Yeah.
it's a multi-layered
And for a
quality
few
event.
of the men that, if you've been asked or if you want to volunteer, who are in the kitchen or helping out, that's always fun too. I've had fun with the guys and then just peeking in and experiencing it from that angle. So speaking of Christmas and everything, we only have two more weeks of our Bring the Kingdom series. So this week and the next on the 24th. And then we start into Christmas Advent, and so wow, that's it's coming quick. So these are pretty appropriate for now, even though they seem so early. We're gonna send them off, and so that they get to their place before Christmas. And so yeah, we just hope that you're enjoying the fall, enjoying November, and enjoying these ways that we get to be involved together and doing life together. Hopefully you're in a life group, and if you're not, talk to us, we can still get you in, but those are going, and we're excited about what we're seeing happening in those groups. So with all that, we hope you have a great rest of your week, and we'll see you on Sunday morning.